The chandeliers in the Drayton mansion caught the light like captured stars, but Mariana knew even stars could fall. She stood at the entrance of their ballroom, watching her husband command the attention of Miami's elite with the same magnetism that had captured her heart 18 years ago. Adrian Vega Drayton moved through the crowd with the confidence of a man who had conquered poverty and built an empire from nothing but determination and the love of a woman who believed in him when no one else would. "Mummy, you're staring again," Isla whispered beside her, elegant in her sapphire gown that complemented her honey-gold skin, a perfect blend of her parents' Cuban and Jamaican Dominican heritage. Mariana smiled, adjusting the Caribbean emerald necklace Adrian had given her on their 10th anniversary. "Your father still takes my breath away, mija, even after all these years." At 16, Isla possessed the grace of old money despite being first-generation wealth. She was weeks away from her Juilliard audition, her fingers already legendary among Miami's classical music circles. The college fund Adrian had established, $500,000 set aside since her birth, would ensure she could pursue her dreams without the burden of debt. "Where's Julian?" Mariana scanned the room for her 12-year-old son. "Probably in the tech room again. You know he'd rather code than socialize." Isla's voice held affection for her younger brother. Despite their age difference, Julian protected her with fierce devotion, his brilliant mind always 3 steps ahead of everyone else. The charity gala was for hurricane relief in Jamaica, a cause close to Mariana's heart. Her mother, Esmeralda, still lived in Kingston, currently recovering from a stroke that had left her partially paralyzed. Mariana had organized tonight's event before receiving the call about her mother's condition 3 days ago. "Mrs. Drayton, you've outdone yourself." Delphine Rousseau, her best friend since college, appeared with champagne. "The auction alone has raised $2 million. "It's not enough," Mariana murmured, her mind on her mother. "I need to fly to Jamaica tomorrow. Mama needs me." Adrian materialized beside them, his hand finding the small of Mariana's back, a gesture so familiar it was like breathing. "Mi amor, you're worried about Esmeralda." She leaned into him, drawing strength from his presence. He smelled of Cuban coffee and expensive cologne, a combination that always meant home. "I hate leaving you with the Henderson acquisition, but—" "Family first," Adrian interrupted, kissing her temple. "Always family first. Take as long as you need." This was the man she'd fallen in love with, the struggling immigrant who'd worked 3 jobs while attending night school, who'd proposed to her with a ring made from a wire he'd shaped himself because he couldn't afford diamonds. Now he'd draped her in jewels, but she still kept that wire ring in her jewelry box, a reminder of where they'd started. "Mr. Drayton," a honey-smooth voice interrupted, "thank you for the invitation." Mariana turned to see a young woman she didn't recognize, couldn't be older than 25, with waves of dark hair and eyes that held ambition poorly disguised as admiration. She wore a red dress that cost more than most people's monthly salary. "Ah, Ms. Navarro." Adrian's voice remained professional. "Mariana, this is Sofia Navarro. She's representing the Castellano Foundation tonight." Sophia extended a manicured hand to Mariana, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. "Mrs. Drayton, your husband speaks so highly of you. He says you're the reason for his success." "We built it together," Mariana replied, noting how Sophia's gaze lingered on Adrian a moment too long. "Success means nothing without someone to share it with." Julian appeared then, his 12-year-old frame already showing signs of his father's height. His eyes, Mariana's eyes, assessed Sophia with unsettling intensity. "Papa, Mr. Chen is looking for you, something about the Singapore deal." Adrian ruffled his son's carefully styled hair. "My business partner in miniature. Julian knows more about our operations than most of my board members." "He's brilliant," Mariana added proudly. "Tested into MIT's Young Genius program, But we want him to have a normal childhood first. Sophia laughed, a tinkling sound that seemed practiced. Beauty, brains, and billions. The Drayton family has it all. Something in her tone made Mariana's instincts prickle, but before she could analyze it, Evander Blackwell, their financial advisor, requested a moment with Adrian. "Excuse me, ladies." Adrian kissed Mariana's cheek. "Save me a dance, mi amor." As he walked away with Evander, Sophia watched him go with an expression Mariana recognized: hunger. Not for the man himself, but for what he represented. Power, money, status. "Mami," Julian said quietly beside her, "I don't like her." "Why not, mijo?" Julian's young face was serious beyond his years. "She looks at Papa the way hackers look at unprotected networks, like something to exploit." Mariana pulled her son closer, disturbed by his observation. Julian had always been preternaturally perceptive, his intelligence sometimes unsettling in its accuracy. The evening continued with its usual glamour. Mariana danced with Adrian to their song, Bésame Mucho, the same one they'd danced to in a tiny apartment in Little Havana when they had nothing but dreams and each other. His hands were steady on her waist, his breath warm against her ear as he whispered, 18 years, and you still make my heart race." "Adrian," she murmured against his shoulder, "promise me something. Anything. If something ever tries to come between us, we fight for this, for our family." He pulled back to look at her, his dark eyes intense. "Nothing could ever come between us, Mariana. You saved me. You saw potential in a nobody with an accent and empty pockets. Everything I am, everything we've built, it's because you loved me first." They were beautiful words. True words. But as Mariana packed for Jamaica the next morning, kissing her family goodbye, she didn't notice how Adrian's gaze lingered on the business card Sofia Navarro had slipped him during the gala. She didn't see Julian watching from the stairs, his young mind already cataloguing the subtle shift in his father's behavior. The Drayton Empire stood tall and golden in the Miami sunrise, built on love, sacrifice, and shared dreams. But empires built on emotion were vulnerable to the same force that created them, the human heart and its terrible capacity for betrayal. As Mariana's plane lifted off for Jamaica, she looked down at the city she'd helped her husband conquer. In her jewelry box at home sat a wire ring, a testament to love that had survived poverty. She didn't yet know that wealth would prove a far more dangerous test. Adrian stood in his office, Sofia Navarro's business card between his fingers. She'd written her personal number on the back with a note, "For investment opportunities." He should have thrown it away, should have recognized the danger, but at 48, with his wife away and a beautiful young woman offering admiration without the weight of history, Adrian made the first small choice that would eventually destroy everything. He saved the number in his phone under S. Castellano Foundation. Julian, watching through the security system he'd hacked months ago out of boredom, saw everything. His 12-year-old mind didn't fully understand what he was witnessing, but he knew enough to start recording. In his room, surrounded by computers and code, the boy who would eventually save his family began documenting his father's downfall. The Golden Empire stood tall that morning, but its foundation had developed the first hairline crack. And everyone knows that even the mightiest structures can be brought down by the smallest fissure, given enough time and pressure. Ela practiced Chopin in the music room, her fingers dancing across keys that would soon play a different tune, one of heartbreak and betrayal, but also, eventually, one of triumph. Because while Adrian Vega Drayton was about to forget what mattered most, his family would remember, and they would rise from his ashes stronger than before. The stars in the chandelier continued to shine, waiting for their inevitable fall. Chapter 2. Cracks in Paradise. 3 weeks in Jamaica had changed something fundamental in Mariana's soul. Watching her mother fight for each breath had reminded her that life was precious, finite, and not to be wasted on anything that didn't matter. She returned to Miami on a humid Thursday afternoon, expecting to find her family as she'd left them. Instead, she found Adrian's office door locked during dinner time, his voice animated behind it as he spoke to someone about revolutionary investment strategies and unprecedented returns. "Papa's been weird since you left," Isla said, pushing salmon around her plate. Her usually bright eyes seemed dimmed. "He missed my pre-audition recital." "He didn't miss it," Julian corrected, his tone oddly protective of his father while his eyes told a different story. "He was there for 7 minutes." Mariana's heart clenched. Adrian had never missed Isla's performances. Music was their special bond. He'd grown up listening to his father Cassius play guitar in the streets of Havana before they'd fled to America. "Where is he now?" she asked. "Conference call with Singapore," Julian replied, but something in his voice suggested he knew more. "He's been taking lots of calls, sometimes at 2-3 in the morning." After dinner, Mariana found Adrian in his office, surrounded by papers she didn't recognize, financial projections for companies she'd never heard of. His usually immaculate desk was chaos, and his eyes had the fevered brightness of a gambler on a winning streak. "Mi amor," he said, barely looking up. "How's Esmeralda?" "Stable, fighting." Mariana moved behind him, her hands on his shoulders. He was tense, vibrating with an energy she didn't recognize. "Adrian, what's all this?" "The future," he said, spinning in his chair to face her. "Mariana, I've been playing it too safe. All these years, conventional investments, traditional strategies. But there's so much more out there. Cryptocurrency, NFT platforms, virtual real estate in the metaverse." "Virtual real estate." Mariana's brow furrowed. "Adrian, we built this empire on solid foundations, real buildings, legitimate businesses." "That's old thinking." His dismissal stung. In 18 years, he'd never dismissed her opinion on business. They'd built everything together, her cautious wisdom balancing his ambition. "The Castellano Foundation has connections to revolutionary platforms, 20-30 times returns in months, not years." The Castellano Foundation. She remembered the young woman in the red dress, Sofia Navarro. Is this about that representative from the gala? "Sofia has vision," Adrian said, and the way he said her name, Sofia, not Ms. Navarro, made Mariana's stomach clench. "She understands where the world is heading." "She's 25, Adrian. What could she possibly understand about age doesn't determine vision?" His defensive tone was new, sharp. "Maybe if we weren't so stuck in traditional thinking—" "Traditional thinking built our children's future," Mariana interrupted. "Traditional thinking ensures Isla's education, Julian's opportunities." Adrian's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and his entire demeanor shifted, softening. A small smile played on his lips as he typed a response. When he looked back at Mariana, he seemed to remember she was there. "I'm doing this for our family," he said. "Trust me." Trust. Such a simple word that had once come so easily. But as Mariana lay in bed that night, Adrian sighed empty as he took another late-night call. Trust felt like sand slipping through her fingers. Julian knocked on her door at midnight. "Mummy, can I show you something?" In his room, surrounded by multiple monitors, her 12-year-old son pulled up financial records. "I've been tracking Papa's transactions. He's liquidated 30% of our stable portfolios in the last 2 weeks. "Julian, you shouldn't be—" "Someone has to watch," he said firmly. "Papa's not himself. Look at this." He pulled up a pattern of calls and meetings. Every time he talks to this number, he makes another risky investment within hours. It's like he's being coached. The number had no name attached, but the frequency was alarming, sometimes 5-6 calls a day. "Mijo, your father knows what he's doing." Julian looked at her with eyes too wise for his age. "Does he? Or does he just think he does? The next morning, Mariana tried again. She found Adrian in the kitchen at dawn, something that never happened. He was usually in the gym at this hour, maintaining the physique that had first caught her eye at a community college in Little Havana. "Couldn't sleep?" she asked, pouring coffee from the Cuban press. "Excited," he corrected. "There's this new platform launching next month. If we get in on the ground floor—" "We?" Mariana sat across from him. "Since when do you make investment decisions without me?" His jaw tightened. "Since you've been in Jamaica for 3 weeks. The market doesn't wait, Mariana. Neither does our family. Isla says you've been distant. Isla's being dramatic. She's nervous about Juilliard. She's nervous because her father, who once drove 8 hours to see her play at a small competition, suddenly can't sit through a recital." Adrian stood abruptly. "I don't have time for this. Sophia's presenting to potential investors today, and I need to be there." Sophia. Mariana tasted the name like something bitter. "You're spending a lot of time with Ms. Navarro. It's business." "Is it?" He turned to her then, and for a moment she saw a flash of guilt before it was replaced by indignation. "After everything I've built for this family, you're questioning me. I've given you everything, Mariana. This house, the cars, the jewels. I never asked for any of that," she said quietly. "I fell in love with a man who had nothing but dreams and determination. I'd trade every diamond for that man back." Something shifted in Adrian's face. Regret, perhaps, or recognition. But his phone buzzed, and the moment shattered. He glanced at the screen, and his expression softened in that way she'd begun to hate. "I have to go," he said. "Adrian." Her voice stopped him at the door. "I know what it's like to watch someone you love slip away. I'm watching my mother fight for her life. Don't make me watch you destroy yours." He left without responding. That afternoon, while Adrian was at his meeting, Mariana did something she'd never thought she'd do. She went through his home office, not the financial records. Julian had those covered. She looked for something else, evidence of where her husband's heart was heading. She found it in a deleted email folder he'd forgotten to empty. Exchanges with Sophia that started professional but had evolved. "You understand me in a way no one has in years," he'd written. "Your vision excites me." Sophia's responses were carefully crafted, never quite crossing a line but dancing along it. "A man of your caliber deserves to be appreciated fully. Your wife is lucky, but does she see the visionary you're becoming? We could create something extraordinary together." Mariana sat in Adrian's chair, staring at the emails, remembering another time. 18 years ago, when she'd found love letters Adrian had written but never sent, practicing how to tell her he loved her in English he was still learning. Those letters had been clumsy, earnest, beautiful. These emails were something else, the words of a man forgetting who he was. Ela found her there an hour later. "Mummy, are you okay?" Mariana pulled her daughter close. "Tell me about Juilliard, mija. Tell me about your dreams." As Isla talked about music and New York and the future she'd worked so hard for, Mariana held her and made a silent promise. Whatever was happening to Adrian, whatever spell this Sophia had cast, she wouldn't let it destroy their children's dreams. That night, Adrian came home late, flushed with success. "We did it," he announced. 50 million invested in 3 new platforms. Sophia says the returns will be astronomical. 50 million? Mariana's blood ran cold. "Adrian, that's 40% of our liquid assets. It's an investment in our future." He was giddy, almost manic. "In a year, we'll triple our worth." Julian watched from the stairs, his laptop in hand. He'd already traced the platforms Adrian had invested in. 2 were less than 6 months old. One didn't even have a working product yet. His father, the man who'd built an empire on careful research and solid foundations, was throwing money at shadows and promises. The cracks in paradise were widening, and everyone could feel it except Adrian, too intoxicated by the admiration of a young woman and the promise of impossible returns to see that he was destroying everything real for something that existed only in his imagination. Chapter 3. The Unraveling. The call came at 3 in the morning, 6 weeks after Mariana's return from Jamaica, jerking her from restless sleep, while Adrian's side of the bed remained empty again. "Mrs. Drayton?" Evander Blackwell's voice was strained. "I'm sorry to call at this hour, but there's been a significant irregularity in your accounts. Can you come to my office this morning?" Mariana sat up, her heart pounding. "What kind of irregularity?" "I'd rather discuss it in person. Can you come alone, without Adrian?" The request sent ice through her veins. In 15 years of managing their finances, Evander had never asked to see her without Adrian. She found her husband in his office, asleep at his desk, his phone inches from his hand. The screen lit up with a text. "Last night was incredible. Your vision for our future together is intoxicating. Our future together." Mariana's hands trembled as she screenshotted the message with her own phone. Adrian stirred but didn't wake, and she saw him clearly in the harsh morning light. Hollow eyes, stubble turning grey. The wedding ring she'd placed on his finger 18 years ago, absent from his hand. She found it in his jacket pocket later, along with a receipt from La Mer, Miami's most exclusive restaurant. Dinner for two, $800, dated 3 nights ago when he'd said he was in emergency meetings. "Mummy?" Julian stood in the doorway, already dressed for school. "You're going somewhere?" "Evander's office." She wouldn't lie to her son. He'd proven himself too perceptive for comfortable deceptions. "About the missing money?" Julian's question stopped her cold. What missing money? Her 12-year-old son pulled out his phone, showing her tracking software he'd built. $3 million moved to an offshore account last week. Another $2 million yesterday. The transfers were authorized with Papa's credentials, but the pattern is wrong. He always moves money in specific increments, never round numbers like this. $5 million. Gone. Mariana kissed Julian's forehead. "Go to school. Take care of Isla." "Mummy, there's something else." Julian's voice dropped. "I hacked Papa's phone. I'm sorry, but I was worried. He's been meeting her, Sophia. Sometimes at her apartment, sometimes at hotels." The words should have destroyed her, but instead, Mariana felt oddly calm. Like standing in the eye of a hurricane, knowing the worst winds were coming but finding peace in the moment before impact. Evander's office was a study in controlled panic. Papers covered every surface, his usually immaculate appearance disheveled. "Mariana, thank God." He pulled up multiple screens. "Adrian's liquidated 70% of your stable portfolios. He's invested in companies that barely exist, shell corporations, pyramid schemes dressed as innovation. And now money is disappearing into accounts I can't trace. How much have we lost?" On paper, 40 million. In reality, if these investments are what I think they are, potentially everything. Everything. The word echoed in her mind. "What about the children's trusts?" "Protected for now, but Mariana, there's more." Evander pulled up another screen. "Adrian's been taking out loans against your properties, 15 million so far. The paperwork was filed 2 days ago." "That's impossible. Both our signatures are required." Evander turned his screen toward her. There was her signature, perfectly forged on document after document. "I need you to file a report," Evander said gently. "This is fraud. He's my husband. He's destroying your family's future." Mariana left Evander's office feeling hollowed out. But instead of going home, she drove to an address Julian had sent her, a gleaming high-rise in Brickell, Unit 4012. She didn't have to wait long. Adrian emerged at noon, adjusting his tie, Sophia behind him, her hand lingering on his arm. They kissed, not passionate, but familiar, comfortable. The kiss of people who'd been kissing for a while. Mariana waited until Adrian's car disappeared before approaching Sophia, who was still standing outside, typing on her phone. Ms. Navarro. Sophia looked up, no surprise on her face. Mrs. Drayton. I wondered when we'd have this conversation. You're destroying my family. Sophia laughed, a sound like breaking glass. I'm not destroying anything. I'm simply showing Adrian what he could have. A partner who understands his vision, who doesn't hold him back with fear and conventional thinking. You're 25. You know nothing about building something real. I know enough to recognize a man who's bored with his life, tired of being treated like a walking checkbook by his family. Sophia's eyes glittered with malice. He tells me everything. How Isla only talks to him when she needs something. How Julian judges him. How you've stopped seeing him as a man and only see him as a provider. The words stung because they held a grain of truth. Had she taken him for granted? Had the children? But then Mariana remembered the man who'd missed Isla's recital, who'd forgotten Julian's coding competition, who'd stopped saying, "I love you," 3 weeks ago. You think you've won something, Mariana said quietly. But you've only caught a man in free fall. The Adrian I married would never betray his children. The man you're sleeping with, he's already betrayed himself. She walked away, Sophia's voice following her. He's leaving you. The papers are already drawn up. At home, Mariana found Isla crying in the music room, a letter crushed in her hand. Mummy, my account, my college fund. It's gone. The letter was from the bank. The account holding Isla's $500,000 college fund had been emptied 3 days ago, authorized by Adrian Vega Drayton, transferred to an investment account in the Cayman Islands. He took it? Isla's voice broke. Papa took my future? Mariana held her daughter as she sobbed, her own heart shattering with each tear. This wasn't just betrayal. This was theft from his own child. Julian appeared in the doorway, his face set with determination. I know where the money went. All of it. On his laptop, he showed them a complex web of transactions. Adrian hadn't just invested poorly, he'd been funneling money to accounts connected to Sophia's family. Her brother ran 3 of the investment platforms. Her father owned the offshore shells. It's a con, Julian said flatly. Papa's being conned, and he's too infatuated to see it. That night, Adrian came home briefly, grabbing clothes and documents. Mariana confronted him in their bedroom. You took Isla's college fund. He didn't deny it. It's an investment. In 6 months, it'll be worth triple. It's gone, Adrian, just like the 50 million, just like our marriage. Don't be dramatic. But his hands shook as he packed. Sophia understands what we're building, a new kind of empire, free from old limitations. Sophia's family is stealing from you. Adrian's face darkened. You're jealous. You can't stand that someone younger, more visionary, more manipulative. I'm in love with her. The words hung between them like a death sentence. I haven't felt alive in years, Mariana. With her, I remember what it's like to have ambition, to dream. You dreamed with me once. We built those dreams together. That was before you became comfortable. Before you stopped seeing me as anything more than a bank account. Mariana pulled out the wire ring from her jewelry box, the one he'd made her when they had nothing. I never saw you as a bank account. I saw you as the man who worked 3 jobs to pay for night school, who learned English by reading to baby Isla every night, who promised me we'd build something beautiful together. Adrian looked at the ring, and for a moment she saw him, really saw him. The man she'd married was still there, buried under ego and delusion and the intoxication of a young woman's calculated attention. But then his phone rang, Sophia's ringtone, and the moment shattered. "I have to go," he said. "If you leave now, if you choose her over your children's future, there's no coming back from this." He paused at the door. "The investments will pay off. You'll see. In 6 months, you'll all be thanking me." After he left, Julian sat with his mother and sister in the music room. "I can fix this," he said quietly. "I've been tracking everything, every transaction, every transfer." Sophia's family made one mistake. They used the same encryption key for all their offshore accounts. "I cracked it 3 days ago." "Julian, that's illegal." "So is stealing from your own children." His young face was hard with resolve. "Papa might be lost, but our money doesn't have to be." As Ela played a mournful Chopin nocturne and Mariana held her brilliant, brave son, she made a decision. Adrian had chosen his path. Now she would choose theirs. The unraveling was complete. The man who'd built an empire on love and determination had traded it all for an illusion. But his family, the family he'd abandoned for a mirage, would not go down with his ship. They would rise, and Adrian Vega Drayton would learn that the greatest loss wasn't money or status or even reputation. It was the love of the people who'd believed in him when he had nothing, now watching him choose nothing over everything. Chapter 4. Stolen Dreams. The sound of Isla's crying would haunt Mariana forever, not the sharp sobs of immediate pain, but the quiet, broken whimpers of a child whose father had stolen more than money. It was the sound of trust dying, of faith crumbling, of a daughter realizing that the first man she ever loved had chosen a stranger over her future. It was Tuesday morning, 2 days after Adrian's departure. The kitchen that had once echoed with family laughter now felt like a mausoleum. Isla sat at the table with her Juilliard acceptance letter, the one that had arrived yesterday like a cruel joke, the paper trembling in her hands. Her fingers, the same fingers that could make piano keys weep with beauty, traced the embossed letterhead over and over, as if trying to make it real in a world that had suddenly become surreal. "Full tuition is due in 8 weeks," she read aloud, her voice hollow. "Congratulations on your acceptance to the most prestigious music program in the world." "We'll figure it out," Mariana promised, though the words felt empty. Their accounts were frozen pending investigation. The house, their home, was collateral for loans she hadn't known existed. Even the Steinway piano Isla practiced on, Adrian's gift for her 15th birthday, had been leveraged against a loan. "Figure it out?" Isla's laugh was bitter, aged beyond her 16 years. "Papa took $500,000, Mammy. 500,000. Do you know how many hours I practiced for that money? How many competitions I won? How many times I chose piano over parties, over friends, over having a normal teenage life because I thought I was building towards something?" Julian typed furiously on his laptop, his face illuminated by multiple screens. "I've traced the full scope of the theft. Papa didn't just take Isla's fund. He liquidated my trust too, the one Abuela Catalina left me. 300,000 gone. Catalina." Adrian's mother, who'd escaped Cuba with nothing but the clothes on her back and a photo of her late husband. She'd worked as a seamstress until her fingers bled, literally bled, saving every penny for her grandson's future. She'd died 2 years ago, clutching Julian's hand, whispering in Spanish, "This is for your dreams, mijito. Dream bigger than we ever could." "Does Papa know?" Isla asked. "Does he know he stole from his dead mother's legacy?" The question hung unanswered because they all knew the truth. The Adrian they loved would have been horrified. The Adrian consumed by Sophia's web of lies had justified it as an investment. Investment, the word had become poison in their home. Julian pulled up another screen. "There's more. 3 weeks ago, Papa accessed the emergency medical fund. the one for Abuela Esmeralda's care. $70,000. Gone. Mariana's hand flew to her mouth. Her mother, still recovering in Jamaica, needed that money for rehabilitation, for the nurses who helped her relearn to walk. Adrian had promised, sworn on his father's grave, that fund was sacred. He chose her over his own mother-in-law's recovery. Idla's voice cracked. Abuela Esmeralda, who taught him to dance salsa at our wedding, who called him her second son. Desmond Baptiste arrived at noon, looking older than his 47 years. Mariana's brother was a financial attorney who'd handled divorces that made headlines, but he'd never looked as grim as he did walking into his sister's home, seeing his niece and nephew aged by betrayal. It's worse than we thought, he said, spreading documents across the dining table, the same table where they'd celebrated Adrian's first $1 million deal, champagne flowing like hope. Adrian didn't just take the children's money. He's been systematically draining your joint accounts for 2 months. Every safety net, every backup plan, gone. How much is left? Mariana's voice was steady, though her hands trembled as she reached for the papers. In liquid assets? About 800,000, but that's frozen. The house is mortgaged to the hilt. He took out 3 separate loans, forging your signature each time. The cars are leased under his name. The vacation home in the Keys sold last month without your knowledge. The only thing protected is your mother's house in Jamaica. It's in your maiden name. A house in Kingston. That was what 18 years of building an empire had left them. Mariana thought of the empire's beginning, their first apartment, 1 bedroom, sharing ramen noodles and dreams. They'd been richer then, in ways that mattered. There's more, Desmond continued. I had my investigator look into Sofia Navarro. She's done this before, 3 times in different cities, always older, wealthy, married men, always the same pattern. Flattery, risky investments that funnel to her family, then she disappears when the money runs out. We have to warn Adrian, Isla said, still defending the father who'd betrayed her. I tried, Desmond replied. He's filed a restraining order against me. Says I'm harassing him and his business partner. Business partner. Not girlfriend, not mistress. Business partner. As if that made the betrayal cleaner. As if professional terminology could sanitize personal destruction. Julian suddenly sat up straighter. I found something. Papa just initiated another transfer. $5 million from the emergency fund. What emergency fund? Mariana asked. The one he hid from everyone, including you. It's registered under his father's name, Cassius Drayton. But Cassius has been dead for 10 years. So Papa's been using it as a shadow account. $5 million. Hidden money while he claimed they needed to take loans. $5 million that could have paid for both children's educations, Esmeralda's care, their entire future, sitting in a dead man's name, while Adrian cried poverty to justify his thefts. He's transferring it now? Desmond leaned over Julian's shoulder. In real time, to an account in... Julian's fingers flew across the keyboard. Got it. The Navarro Group. It's Sofia's father's company in Panama. Can you stop it? Julian looked at his mother, then his sister, then back at his screen. Technically, yes. Legally, number, but. But what? There's a window. During international transfers, there's a 24-hour verification period for amounts over $1 million. If someone were to alert the bank to potential fraud, flag the deceased person's name being used. That would expose Adrian to federal charges for identity theft, fraud, and money laundering, Desmond said. He exposed himself when he stole from his children, Mariana said, her voice hard as the diamonds Adrian had once showered her with. As Desmond made calls and Julian worked his digital magic, Mariana found Isla in the music room, playing Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto No. 1. 2, the piece she'd planned for her Juilliard audition. The notes filled the space with unbearable beauty, each one a small death of dreams deferred. I was going to dedicate my first concert to him, Isla said without stopping, to Papa, for believing in my dreams, for never missing a recital until Sophia. No, Mummy, until he stopped being Papa. Isla's fingers stilled on the keys. The man who took my college fund isn't my father. My father is dead, isn't he? Killed by greed and lust and stupidity. Mariana sat beside her daughter on the bench, remembering another time. Isla at 6, Adrian teaching her chopsticks, both of them laughing as she mastered it in minutes, and he struggled for hours. He'd said then, "She got all the talent, Murray. All we can do is make sure the world sees it. Your father is lost, not dead, but that doesn't mean we wait for him to find his way back. What do? We save ourselves." That evening, as the sun painted Miami's skyline gold, the same gold Adrian had always chased, Julian presented his plan. He'd spent hours mapping every transaction, every connection, every digital footprint Sophia's family had left. "They made a mistake," he said, projecting his findings onto the TV screen. "They used a small credit union in Panama for their initial transfers. That credit union was hacked last year, not by me," he added quickly. "But the vulnerability is still there. I can't take back what they stole, but I can freeze it." "For how long?" Desmond asked. "Long enough for legal proceedings, long enough to prove fraud, long enough for Papa to realize he's been conned." "Do it," Mariana said. "Mummy, if I do this, Papa could go to prison. The authorities will investigate everything." Mariana thought of Adrian, somewhere in the city with Sophia, probably celebrating another successful transfer while his children's futures burned. She thought of Catalina's bloody fingers sewing for Julian's dreams, of Esmeralda struggling to walk without proper care, of Isla's music dying note by note. "Your father made his choice, now we make ours." Julian's fingers hesitated over the keyboard for just a moment. The last moment of childhood innocence before he saved his family by condemning his father. Then he typed. Within minutes, alarms started. Not literal ones, but digital notifications cascading across Julian's screens. Frozen assets, flagged accounts, federal investigations initiated. Desmond's phone rang. He listened, then smiled grimly. The $5 million transfer was stopped. The FBI's Financial Crimes Unit is very interested in why a dead man has been moving millions offshore. They ordered pizza that night, all they could afford, and sat together in the house they might lose, planning their survival. Isla would defer Juilliard for a year, take a gap year to work and save. Julian would accept the MIT Young Genius program's full scholarship, starting immediately. Mariana would return to what she'd done before Adrian, financial consulting, the skill that had helped build their empire in the first place. At midnight, Adrian called Mariana's phone. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. "What did you do?" His voice was ragged, desperate. "Protected our children. You've ruined everything, the investments, the opportunities." "The lies, Adrian. They were all lies. Sophia's father is going to sue. He says we breached contracts. Let him try. Your son has documented everything, every transfer to Panama, every shell company, every fraud." "My son." Adrian's laugh was bitter. "Julian did this. Julian saved what was left of our future while you were busy destroying it. I'll fight this. I'll get custody. You'll do nothing. You're under federal investigation for fraud, identity theft, and embezzlement. You stole from your own children, Adrian. You stole from your mother's ghost." Silence. Then quieter. "I was trying to build something bigger. You had everything. A wife who loved you, children who adored you, a life most people dream of, and you traded it for a con artist's attention. She loves me. She loves your money. And now that it's frozen, now that you're under investigation, watch how fast that love evaporates." Adrian hung up. It would be the last time they'd speak for months. The next morning brought news that spread through Miami's elite circles like wildfire. Adrian Vega Drayton, millionaire entrepreneur, under investigation for fraud, assets frozen, wife filing for divorce, children's college funds stolen. But in the Drayton house, as Isla played piano and Julian coded and Mariana rebuilt their lives piece by piece, there was something Adrian's money had never bought. Peace. The peace of truth, of choosing each other, of surviving the worst betrayal together. Sofia Navarro disappeared from Miami that same morning, leaving Adrian with nothing but federal charges and the hollow echo of promises that had cost him everything real. The dreams he'd stolen from his children would haunt him forever. But those children, brilliant, resilient, and raised by a woman who knew how to build empires from nothing, would create new dreams. Better dreams. Dreams that couldn't be stolen because they were built on something more valuable than money, the unbreakable bond of a family that chose each other over everything else. Chapter 5. The boy who sees everything. Julian Drayton had always been different. Where other 12-year-olds obsessed over video games, he found beauty in code, patterns in chaos, and truth in the digital footprints people left behind. At 3 a.m., while Miami slept, Julian sat before 6 monitors in his room, each screen telling a different part of his father's destruction. He'd been tracking, documenting, preparing for this moment for weeks. But knowing something intellectually and witnessing its reality were vastly different experiences. "You should be sleeping, mijo." Mariana stood in his doorway, wrapped in the silk robe Adrian had given her for their 15th anniversary. One of the few expensive things she hadn't been able to bring herself to throw away. "Sofia's family is moving money again," Julian said, not looking away from his screens. "They think they're being clever, using cryptocurrency this time. But they're using the same wallet addresses they've used before. Amateurs." Mariana moved to stand behind her son, her hand on his shoulder. On one screen, transaction logs scrolled past. On another, a map of offshore accounts lit up like a constellation of greed. On a third, security footage from Adrian's office building that Julian had somehow accessed. "Is that legal?" she asked, indicating the footage. "Is stealing from your children legal?" Julian countered, then softer. "I'm sorry, Mummy. I know you don't like when you sound like you're 40 instead of 12. She kissed the top of his head. "You're protecting us, I understand. But Julian, I need you to still be a child sometimes. Children don't save their families from financial ruin." "No," Mariana agreed. "But boys who grow up too fast break their mothers' hearts." Julian finally turned to look at her. In the blue glow of the monitors, she could see Adrian in his features, the strong jaw, the determined eyes. But where Adrian's determination had turned to obsession, Julian's remained pure, focused on protection rather than conquest. "Uncle Desmond is coming over tomorrow," Julian said. "I found something he needs to see." "What kind of something?" Julian pulled up a new screen. "Papa didn't just take our money. He's been taking from the company too. Small amounts, but consistently. 300 here, 500 there, always to accounts connected to Sofia. He's been embezzling from his own business for 7 weeks. That's a federal crime. I know, but Mummy, there's more." Julian's fingers flew across the keyboard. Sofia made a mistake. She used her real name on one account, not Sofia Navarro, but her actual name. Sonia Castellanos. She has 3 warrants in California for fraud. She's been doing this since she was 19. 6 years. 6 years of destroying families, and Adrian had walked right into her web. "Your father won't believe it," Mariana said. "He'll think we fabricated it. Then I'll show him something he can't deny." Julian pulled up another screen. Emails, but not Adrian's. "I hacked Sofia's cloud storage. Everything's here. Messages to her father about the mark, instructions on how to handle the older one's jealous wife, even a timeline for extraction once the money runs out." Mariana read the emails, her heart breaking with each word. They referred to Adrian as Target 4, just a number, just another fool. "There's a video," Julian said quietly, "of her, with someone else, taken 2 days ago when Papa thought she was at a business dinner. I don't need to see that. But Papa does. He needs to understand that while he was destroying us for her, she was laughing at him. They all were." The next morning, Desmond arrived with Lysander Vega, Adrian's cousin who worked in forensic accounting. Lysander had tried to warn Adrian weeks ago about the suspicious investments, only to be cut off and called jealous of his success. "Julian," Lysander said, reviewing the evidence, "this is comprehensive. With this, we can not only freeze the stolen assets, but potentially recover them." "How much?" Mariana asked. "Maybe 60%. The rest is probably already gone, spent or hidden too well to trace." 60% of their fortune. It was something, but not enough for the life they'd known. "I can get more," Julian said, "but I'd need to do things that are grayer." "No," Mariana said firmly. "We don't become criminals to catch criminals." "Then we need Papa to testify against them," Desmond said. "If he admits he was defrauded, helps prosecution, we might recover more. But that means he has to accept the truth." "He won't," Isla said from the doorway. She'd been listening, still in her pajamas, looking younger than her 16 years. "He's too proud. He'd rather lose everything than admit he was fooled." "Then we make him see," Julian said. He pulled out a USB drive. "Everything's on here. Every email, every transaction, every photo of Sophia with other men, even recordings of her talking to her father about Papa being the easiest mark yet." "You recorded her?" "Her phone auto-backs up to the cloud. She never changed the default settings." Julian's expression was grim. "In one recording, she laughs about Papa crying after Mummy confronted him. She calls him pathetic." Ela made a sound like she'd been punched. Her father, her hero, reduced to a joke in a con artist's story. "I'll take it to him," Lysander said. "He might listen to me." "He won't," Julian said, "but Mr. Chen might. Aurelius Chen, Adrian's business partner, the man who'd built the empire alongside him. The one person besides Mariana whose opinion Adrian had always valued. "Chen's in Singapore," Desmond said. "He's flying back tonight," Julian said, pulling up flight records. "His daughter is getting married this weekend. Papa's supposed to be the best man." Was supposed to be, before he'd destroyed everything. Mariana made the call. Chen answered on the first ring, his voice careful. "Mariana, I heard about everything." "Aurelius, we need your help. Adrian won't listen to us, but he might listen to you." "He's not returning my calls. I've tried. We have proof that he's being conned. That this woman is a professional fraudster. Julian has everything documented." A pause. "The boy did this?" "The boy is saving us all," Mariana said, looking at her son with pride and sorrow. "But he shouldn't have to." Chen agreed to meet with them that evening. In his office overlooking Biscayne Bay, he reviewed Julian's evidence with the thoroughness that had made him millions. "This is devastating," he said finally. "Not just the fraud, the embezzlement from our company. Adrian's been stealing from his own life's work." "Can you make him see?" Mariana asked. "I can try, but Mariana, even if he accepts the truth, the damage is done. The board will vote him out. His reputation is destroyed, and you—" "We're surviving," she said firmly. "My children are brilliant and strong. We'll rebuild." Chen studied her for a long moment. "You know, when Adrian first introduced us 20 years ago, I told him he was an idiot if he didn't marry you. You had the vision, the steadiness, the wisdom. He had the charm and ambition, but you had the foundation. We built it together." "No," Chen said gently. "You built it. He just took the credit. and now he's torn it all down for a woman who wouldn't look at him twice if he was still poor. That night, Julian couldn't sleep. He sat at his monitors, watching his father's world collapse in real time. Federal investigators had seized Adrian's office. His accounts were frozen. Sophia had disappeared, but not before clearing out the apartment Adrian had bought her, including art and jewelry worth hundreds of thousands. "You did the right thing," Mariana said, finding him there at dawn. "Did I?" Julian's young voice cracked. "I destroyed my own father." "No, mijo, your father destroyed himself. You just refused to let him take us with him." Julian pulled up one last file. A photo from 2 years ago. The family at Isla's concert, Adrian's arm around Mariana, pride shining in his eyes as he looked at his children. They looked perfect. They looked happy. They had been happy. "Do you think he remembers?" Julian asked. "When he's with her, does he remember what he had?" Mariana didn't answer because she knew the truth. Adrian was too lost in the fog of his choices to remember anything real. But someday, when the fog cleared and Sophia was gone and the money was dust, he would remember. And that memory would be the cruelest punishment of all. Chapter 6. Love Letters from Yesterday. The storage unit hadn't been opened in 5 years. Mariana stood before it with the key, her hand trembling, not from fear, but from the weight of memory pressing against her chest like a physical force, threatening to crush her with the gravity of what was lost. "Why are we here, Mommy?" Isla asked, her voice soft in the fluorescent-lit hallway of the storage facility. "Because sometimes, to move forward, we need to remember what we're leaving behind." The lock clicked open, releasing the ghost of Adrian's cologne, the cheap one he'd worn when they'd first met, before designer fragrances and custom suits. Inside, boxes stacked neat as his ambition once was, each labeled in Mariana's careful script. First apartment, wedding, before children, the beginning. She pulled down a box marked letters and sat on the concrete floor, designer dress and all. Inside, tied with a ribbon that had once been white but had aged to cream, were hundreds of handwritten pages. "My beautiful Mariana," the first one began, dated 20 years ago. "Today I watched you in economics class. You answered every question perfect. Your English is better than mine will ever be. I want to talk to you, but my words get confused. In Spanish, I could tell you that you are the sun that makes my American dream worth dreaming. In English, all I can say is hello. But maybe hello is enough if it makes you smile the way you smiled today when Professor Martinez called you brilliant. You are brilliant. You are everything. One day I will find the English words to tell you. Until then, I write them here, practicing for the moment I am brave enough." Adrian. "Papa wrote these?" Ela knelt beside her, reading over her shoulder, tears already forming in her eyes. "Every day for our first year. He was too shy to speak to me properly, so he wrote." Mariana traced the words with her finger. His English professor helped him translate the important ones. Another letter, water-stained and worn. "I am sorry about yesterday. When your friends laughed at my accent, I should not have walked away. You defended me. You said I was brilliant, just learning. No one ever defended me before. My father, before he died, told me I would amount to nothing in America. My mother cries at night thinking I will fail. But you see something different. You see what I could be, not what I am. I love you, is too soon to say. In Cuba we say it when we feel it. Here I must wait. I wait then, but I love you. I love you in broken English and perfect Spanish, and in the language that needs no words, the way my heart stops when you enter a room." Julian had been silent, standing guard at the door, but now he moved closer, drawn by the raw honesty in his father's young words. He could barely write in English then. He learned by writing to me. Every mistake, every correction, every new word. It was all for us. Mariana pulled out another paper, this one covered in crossed-out attempts. Look, he wrote beautiful 15 different ways, trying to spell it right. He said he couldn't propose until he could spell beautiful correctly, because that's what I was to him. Deep in the box, a photo fell out. Adrian at 28, exhausted, paint splattered on his clothes, standing in front of a house he'd just finished painting. On the back, in his handwriting, Mariana, today I painted our future home. The owner doesn't know it yet, but in 10 years, I will buy this house for you. Every wall will be the color of your happiness. That's, Isla gasped. That's our house, the one we just lost. He painted it as a day laborer 12 years before he bought it. The owner was cruel to him, paid him less than promised. Adrian swore that one day he'd own it, that our children would run through hallways he'd painted with his own hands. Another letter, this one in a sealed envelope marked, "For when I forget." Future Adrian, if you are reading this, you have forgotten who you are. You have forgotten the man who counted pennies to buy Mariana a single rose, who practiced saying, "I love you" in English 1,000 times before saying it to her, who cried when she said it back in Spanish. You have forgotten that money was never the goal, it was the tool to give her the life she deserved. If you have forgotten this, then you have forgotten yourself. Remember, you are not your bank account, you are not your success, you are the man Mariana chose when you had nothing. Be worthy of that choice, forever. Past Adrian, the one who knows what matters. He knew, Julian said quietly. Even then he knew he might lose himself. Success is dangerous for people who've been hungry, Mariana said. It can make you forget the taste of gratitude. Deeper still, a small notebook, Adrian's journal from their first year of marriage. Mariana opened it randomly. Day 97 of marriage. Mariana is pregnant. We have $82 in the bank. I am terrified. Not of poverty. I know poverty. I am terrified I will fail her, that our child will be ashamed of their father's accent, their father's struggles. But tonight, Mariana put my hand on her belly and said, "This baby is already lucky. They get you as their father." How do I tell her that I would sell my soul to be worthy of that faith? How do I explain that every dollar I earn, every deal I make, is an offering on the altar of her belief in me? That was about me, Isla whispered. He was scared when I was coming. He was terrified. You were born during a hurricane, did you know that? The hospital lost power. He held a flashlight for the doctor and sang to me in Spanish to keep me calm. When you finally arrived, he looked at you and said, "She has your hands, Mari. Piano hands. She'll create beautiful things." Another entry. Isla is 3 months old. She only stops crying when I play guitar. Mariana says she recognizes my voice from the womb, all those nights I sang to Marie's belly. Today, I sold my father's guitar, the one he brought from Cuba, to pay for Isla's medicine. My father would understand. The music lives in her now. He sold Abuelo's guitar for me? Without hesitation. That guitar was his most precious possession, the last piece of his father. But you needed antibiotics, and we didn't have insurance. Pages and pages of promises, dreams, plans, sketches of businesses he would build, all with names that incorporated Mariana or the children, Maricorp, Isla Industries, Julian Enterprises, added after his birth. Each one with a note, for them, always for them. Then, a letter dated just after Julian's birth. My son has Mariana's eyes. When he looks at me, I see her, and I promise him silently that I will deserve you both. I will build empires for you. I will give you everything I couldn't give my mother. Every sacrifice you make now, I will repay with interest. You saved me, Mariana. Now I save you back. This is my blood oath, witnessed by our children's sleeping faces. He did save us, Isla said quietly. For a while. No, mija. We saved each other. That's what marriage is, taking turns being strong. At the bottom of the box, wrapped in tissue paper yellowed with age, was the wire ring. But underneath it, something Mariana had forgotten. Adrian's notebook from his citizenship test. Every page covered in practice writing, "I pledge allegiance to the flag," and beside it in Spanish, "But my heart pledges to Mariana." Another page, "Rights and responsibilities of citizens," and in the margin, "Right to love Mariana. Responsibility to deserve her." And on the last page, the day he passed, "I am American now, but more important, I am Mariana's husband. That is my true nationality." "This is why you can't hate him," Julian said, understanding dawning in his young eyes. "You're not mourning the man who betrayed us. You're mourning this man." "This man is dead," Mariana said, but gently. "Killed by success, buried under ambition. The Adrian who wrote these letters would be horrified by what he became." Her phone buzzed. "Chen, Adrian's here. He's seen everything. He wants to talk to you." "No, Mariana, he's broken, completely broken. Sophia emptied the offshore accounts this morning. Everything's gone. Everything." The word should have brought satisfaction, but all Mariana felt was hollow sadness. The man who wrote these letters, who painted houses while dreaming of painting futures, who sold his father's guitar for his daughter's medicine, that man deserved sympathy. The stranger who'd replaced him deserved nothing. "Tell him to read these first." She photographed pages of letters, sending them to Chen. "Tell him to remember who he was before he forgot." An hour later, Chen called back. "He's sobbing. I've never seen him like this. He keeps saying, 'What have I done?' He wants to know if you kept the wire ring." "Tell him the wire ring is with the man who made it. Gone." That evening, back home, Mariana found Isla at the piano, playing something she didn't recognize, a composition of her own, haunting and beautiful, filled with longing for something that never quite existed. "What's it called?" Mariana asked. "Love Letters from Yesterday. It's about loving someone who no longer exists, about grieving someone who's still alive but spiritually dead." Julian looked up from his laptop. The FBI seized Sonia's assets. She's been arrested at the Canadian border. Papa's testimony could put her away for 15 years. Will he testify? Uncle Desmond says yes, in exchange for immunity on the embezzlement charges. Immunity. Adrian would walk free while his family paid for his choices. But perhaps that was its own punishment. Walking free in a world where everyone knew what you'd done, what you'd thrown away. "That's not justice," Isla said. "No," Mariana agreed, "but justice isn't what we need. We need to move forward." She pulled out the letters she'd brought home, selecting one final page. Adrian's handwriting, shaky with exhaustion, dated just after Isla's birth. 2 children now. 2 pieces of my heart walking around outside my body. "Mariana, you gave me this. You gave me America, gave me purpose, gave me reason to fight through every rejection, every failure, every moment I wanted to quit. If I lose everything tomorrow but keep you 3, I am the richest man alive. Nothing else matters. Nothing else will ever matter." "He wrote that?" Isla's voice broke. "He wrote it. He meant it. Then he forgot it." Mariana folded the letter carefully. "But we won't forget. We'll remember the man who wrote these letters, even as we divorce the man who betrayed them." That night, Adrian stood outside their gate, no longer able to enter the home he'd built. Through the security camera, Julian watched his father hold a paper, one of his old letters Chen had printed. Adrian stood there for 3 hours, reading and rereading his own words, the promises he'd made and broken, the love he'd sworn was eternal. When he finally left, he looked like a man who'd aged a decade in a day. "Should I let him in?" Julian asked his mother. "No, mijo. The man who wrote those letters wouldn't want us to let in the man he became." In the morning, a package arrived. No return address, but Mariana knew the handwriting. Inside, Adrian's wedding ring and a new letter. the first he'd written in 15 years. I am the stranger who murdered the man you loved. I'm sorry. He's sorry. We're both sorry. The boy who loved you would be ashamed of the man who betrayed you. I have no words in any language to fix this, but know that somewhere, in a parallel universe where I wasn't weak, where I wasn't foolish, where I valued gold over diamonds, that Adrian is still yours, forever yours. This Adrian will disappear. It's the only gift I have left to give. Mariana burned the letter, not from anger, but from mercy. Some words were too painful to keep, but the old letters, the ones from yesterday, those she kept. Someday, when the wound wasn't so fresh, she'd give them to her children. Evidence that their father had once been worthy of their love. Evidence that love itself, even when betrayed, even when murdered by the very hands that built it, was still the most beautiful thing humans could create, even if it only lived in yesterday. Chapter 7. The Digital Hunter. The Forensic Financial Crimes Unit of the FBI had seen many things, but never a 12-year-old boy walking into their Miami office with evidence that would make their careers. Julian Drayton sat across from Special Agent Patricia Vance, his laptop bag at his feet, his mother's hand on his shoulder. He looked like what he was, a child in a man's war. But when he opened his laptop and began presenting, Agent Vance realized she was looking at a prodigy. "This is the money trail," Julian said, projecting onto their wall. 212 transactions over 11 weeks. Each one is tagged with metadata proving time, origin, and destination. "How did you obtain this?" Agent Vance asked carefully. "My father gave me administrative access to all family accounts when I was 10. He wanted me to learn the business." Julian's voice was steady. "He never revoked it. Everything I've done has been within my legal authority as an authorized user." Desmond, there as their attorney, nodded. "We've verified. Julian had legitimate access to everything he's presenting. But the offshore accounts? The encrypted communications?" Julian pulled up another screen. "Public blockchain records for the cryptocurrency transactions. Anyone can access these if they know where to look. The emails were obtained from devices owned by my father, which I had permission to use. The security footage is from our own buildings." Agent Vance studied the boy. "You know what this means? Your father could face 20 years. "My father is already gone," Julian said quietly. "The man who taught me coding, who said I'd change the world someday. That man disappeared months ago. I'm just trying to save what's left of my family." Over the next 3 hours, Julian walked them through everything. The shell companies in Panama, the connections to Sonia Castellanos, aka Sofia Navarro, the pattern of fraud spanning 3 states and 6 years. "This woman has been doing this since she was 19, Agent Vance asked. "Started with her high school teacher in California, then a restaurant owner in Texas, a widowed contractor in Arizona. My father is her 4th major target, but there were smaller ones between." Julian pulled up a timeline he'd created. "She never stays more than 4 months, never takes everything, usually leaves them with just enough to survive so they're too ashamed to report it. But your father is different. He fell harder, gave more. She got greedy." Julian's young face was grim. Or maybe she knew he'd never admit to being fooled. Either way, she made mistakes this time. "Show me the biggest mistake." Julian smiled then, the first real expression of his age. "She used the same password for everything. Money for love. Not even numbers for letters. Just that." Agent Vance laughed despite herself. "You're kidding." "I'm not. It took me 12 minutes to access everything once I had that." He pulled up Sophia's cloud storage. Every document, every photo, every video she thought was private, including recording devices in her apartment. She recorded my father without his knowledge. Insurance, probably. But she forgot the cameras work both ways. Julian played a video, Sophia on the phone with someone labeled Papa. The older one is almost done, Sophia's voice said in Spanish, which Julian had subtitled. Maybe another month before he's completely drained. The wife finally knows, which makes it easier. Men give more when they're guilty. And his children, the man's voice asked. Sophia laughed. The daughter's college fund was easy. The boy, though, there's something off about him. Too smart, too watchful. Adrian says he's a genius. Dangerous. He's 12. What could he possibly do? Agent Vance paused the video. When was this recorded? 3 weeks ago, the day after she helped my father steal my sister's college fund. She knew it was for college. She suggested it, said Isla could take loans like normal people. The cruelty of it made even the seasoned agent flinch. There's more, Julian said. He pulled up financial records. Sophia's father, Roberto Castellanos, owns 14 businesses, all shells, all used for laundering money from their fraud schemes. But here's where they got sloppy. They used the same bank routing number for all of them. That links everything. Everything. $6 million in fraud across 4 states. That's federal. That's RICO. Agent Vance sat back. You did all this yourself? I had help. Julian glanced at his mother. My Uncle Desmond verified the legal aspects. Mr. Chen provided business records, but the digital investigation, yes, that was me. Why didn't you come forward sooner? I hoped my father would wake up, see the truth himself. But when he took Isla's money... Julian's voice cracked for the first time. She worked her whole life for Juilliard, 3 hours of practice every day since she was 6, and he just took it for her. Agent Vance looked at Mariana. You raised a remarkable son. I raised a child who had to become a soldier, Mariana replied. That's not remarkable. It's tragic. That afternoon, while Julian was at the FBI office, Adrian was across town in Chen's office, watching his world's final collapse. She's gone, he asked for the 5th time, staring at the empty offshore accounts. Arrested at the Canadian border, Chen confirmed, with $4 million in bearer bonds and 3 fake passports. $4 million, my $4 million. The family's $4 million, Chen corrected. Mariana's, the children's, your mother's legacy, all of it. Adrian looked at the evidence Chen had spread across his desk. Photos of Sophia with other men, recordings of her laughing about him, the FBI file showing her previous victims. I gave her everything. You gave her what she wanted. She never wanted you. She said she loved me. She said what you paid her to say. Chen's voice was brutal. Adrian, you're 50 years old. She's 25. Did you really think... I thought I deserved something beautiful, something just for me. You had something beautiful. A wife who built an empire with you, children who worshipped you, a life other men would kill for. Adrian picked up a photo from the desk, his family at last Christmas, 4 months ago. Before Sophia. They were laughing at something Julian had said, Mariana's head thrown back. Isla mid-giggle, his son grinning with pride. I can fix this, Adrian said desperately. I can get the money back. With what? You're under federal investigation. Your assets are frozen. Your business partners have voted you out. You have nothing left to fix anything with. I have information about Sophia, about her family. I can testify. Your 12-year-old son already gave them everything. Julian did what you couldn't. He protected his family. Adrian's face crumbled. Julian did this? Julian saved what was left to save. While you were destroying everything for a con artist's attention, your son was documenting every crime, building a case that will put the Castellanos family away for decades. He's 12. He stopped being 12 the day you chose Sophia over them. That evening, Julian sat with his mother and sister, exhausted from hours of testimony. The FBI had what they needed. Sophia and her father would be indicted within days. Will we get the money back? Isla asked. Some, maybe half. Enough for Juilliard if we're careful. And Papa? Immunity deal. He testifies he stays free, but he'll never work in finance again. Never have access to family assets. Never be trusted with anything valuable. He had us, Isla said quietly. We were valuable. We still are, Mariana said firmly. Just not to him. Julian's laptop chimed. An encrypted message from someone called Deepthroat_Miami. He almost deleted it, then recognized the IP address. Adrian's personal laptop. It's from Papa, he said. The message was simple. I'm proud of you. You're the man I should have been. Protect them. The stranger who was your father. Julian stared at the screen for a long moment, then typed back. I learned from who you were, not who you became. That man was my father. You're just someone who looks like him. He hit send, then blocked the IP address. Some bridges, once burned, couldn't be rebuilt. They could only light the way forward. The digital hunter had caught his prey, exposed the predators, and saved what remained of his pack. At 12 years old, Julian Drayton had done what grown men couldn't. He'd chosen his family over his father, and in doing so, he'd become the man of the house his father had abandoned for an illusion. Chapter 8. When Truth Breaks. The courtroom was packed the day Adrian Vega Drayton took the stand against the woman he'd destroyed his life for. Mariana sat in the back row, Desmond beside her, watching her husband, still legally her husband for another 48 hours, raise his right hand and swear to tell the truth. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. Sonia, sat at the defense table in an orange jumpsuit, her beauty dimmed but not extinguished. She watched Adrian with the same calculated intensity she'd once used to seduce him, but now it carried venom instead of honey. State your name for the record, the prosecutor began. Adrian Vega Drayton. His voice was hollow, a ghost of the commanding presence that once filled boardrooms. Mr. Drayton, do you know the defendant? Yes. How would you describe your relationship? Adrian's eyes flickered to Sophia, then away. I thought we were in love. I now know I was a mark in a long-term fraud scheme. Sophia's lawyer objected, but the judge overruled. The truth was the truth, no matter how painful. For 3 hours, Adrian detailed his downfall. Every meeting, every transaction, every lie he'd swallowed because it came from beautiful lips. The prosecutor, armed with Julian's evidence, walked him through each transfer, each theft from his own family. Mr. Drayton, did you authorize the transfer of $500,000 from your daughter's college fund? Yes. What did Ms. Castellanos tell you about this transfer? She said it was an investment opportunity that would triple within 6 months. She said Ela could attend Juilliard and have money left over. Did you believe her? Adrian's voice cracked. Yes, God help me, yes. What happened to that money? It was transferred to an account in Panama controlled by Roberto Castellanos, the defendant's father. From there it disappeared. In the gallery, Isla gripped Julian's hand. They'd chosen to come despite Mariana's protests. They needed to see this, to hear their father admit what he'd done. Mr. Drayton, the prosecutor continued, did you also transfer $300,000 from a trust established by your deceased mother? Yes. The trust designated for your son's education? Yes. What did Ms. Castellanos say about taking money meant for your 12-year-old son? Adrian closed his eyes. She said children from wealthy families were spoiled. That struggle would build character. That Julian was smart enough to earn scholarships. And you agreed? I dot. Adrian opened his eyes, finding Julian in the crowd. I was not thinking clearly. I was thinking only of pleasing her. The defense attorney stood for cross-examination, sharp as a blade. Mr. Drayton, isn't it true you were a willing participant in every transaction? Yes. No one forced you to transfer money? No. You're a sophisticated businessman with 20 years of experience. Yes. Yet you claim my client, a 25-year-old woman with no formal business education, somehow tricked you. Adrian straightened. Your client is a professional con artist who has been doing this since she was 19. She studies her marks, finds their weaknesses, and exploits them systematically. My weakness was believing someone could love me for who I was, not what I had. Or perhaps your weakness was a midlife crisis and a wandering eye. Objection, the prosecutor called. Sustained. The defense attorney smiled coldly. Mr. Drayton, did my client ever claim to be anyone other than Sofia Navarro? That itself was a lie. Her name is Sonia Castellanos. Did she ever explicitly promise you investment returns? Her father did, under her instruction. Do you have proof of that? My son does. The words hung in the air. The defense attorney turned to the judge. I'd like to call Julian Drayton to the stand. Mariana stood. He's 12 years old. He's also the source of the prosecution's primary evidence, the defense countered. If we're sending my client to prison based on a child's computer games— They're not games, Julian said, standing. His voice carried across the courtroom. I'll testify. The judge called a recess to determine if Julian could testify. In the hallway, Mariana gripped her son's shoulders. You don't have to do this. Yes, I do. She destroyed our family. She needs to pay. Mijo, you're a child. I haven't been a child since Papa started destroying us. Julian's eyes were older than 12. Let me finish this. An hour later, Julian sat in the witness box, looking impossibly small but absolutely determined. Julian, the prosecutor began gently, can you tell us what you discovered about Ms. Castellanos? Julian spoke for 90 minutes, walking the court through his digital investigation with the precision of a seasoned expert. He showed the password patterns, the repeated fraud schemes, the evidence that Sofia had done this before and planned to do it again. How did you know to look for this? The prosecutor asked. Because I watched my father change. He went from never missing my sister's recitals to forgetting she existed. He went from teaching me coding to barely remembering my name. People don't change like that naturally. Something was influencing him. And you believed that something was Ms. Castellanos? I knew it was. I heard him on the phone with her at 3 a.m., promising her our futures while we slept in the rooms he'd built for us. The defense attorney approached Julian carefully, aware that attacking a child witness could backfire spectacularly. Julian, you love your father? I loved who he was. You were angry about his relationship with my client? I was angry that he stole my sister's dreams for someone who was stealing from him. How can you be sure my client was stealing? Julian pulled up his laptop, which had been admitted as evidence. Because I have video of her admitting it. The courtroom went silent as Julian played the recording, Sofia laughing with her father about the older fool and how easy it was to take everything. Sofia's face went white. She hadn't known about the recordings. Where did you get this? The defense attorney demanded. From Ms. Castellanos' own cloud storage. She recorded my father illegally in her apartment. The cameras she installed uploaded everything to the cloud, including her conversations when he wasn't there. That's illegal surveillance. She conducted the illegal surveillance. I just found it. With a password she used for everything, money for love. Someone in the gallery laughed. The judge called for order. When the defense had no more questions, Julian stepped down. As he passed his father, Adrian reached out, but Julian kept walking. There was nothing left to say. The jury deliberated for 2 hours, guilty on all counts. 15 years federal prison for Sofia Sonia, 20 for her father, seizure of all assets traced to the fraud. As Sophia was led away, she looked at Adrian one last time. "You destroyed your own family. I just gave you the excuse." Adrian collapsed in his chair, the truth of her words cutting deeper than any lie she'd told. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. Mariana gave a brief statement. "Justice was served. My children and I will rebuild. We ask for privacy as we heal." "Mrs. Drayton," one reporter called, "what about your husband?" Mariana looked back at the courthouse where Adrian still sat, unable to move. "I don't have a husband. I have memories of one." That night, the family that remained, Mariana, Isla and Julian, sat in their kitchen eating Chinese takeout, the dining room too full of ghosts for comfort. "We won," Isla said, but it didn't sound like victory. "No, mija, we survived. Winning would have been never needing this fight." Julian's phone buzzed, an unknown number. He almost ignored it, then saw the area code. Cuba. "Hello? Julian?" The voice was old, accented. "This is your great-uncle, Cassius's brother. I saw the news. I want you to know, your father was a good man once. This sickness, this greed, it killed his father too. But you broke the chain. You chose honor over blood. The ancestors are proud." After he hung up, Julian told his mother and sister what was said. "He's right," Mariana said. "You broke the chain, both of you. You could have become bitter, vengeful, broken. Instead, you chose to protect each other, to rebuild, to rise." "What about Papa?" Isla asked. "What becomes of him?" "That's no longer our concern. He made his choices. Now he lives with them." Across the city, Adrian sat in a motel room, all he could afford with the cash in his wallet. The divorce papers were beside him, Mariana's signature already in place. Tomorrow, he'd sign them. Tomorrow, he'd legally become what he'd already become in every other way. Alone. The truth had broken everything, but for his family, his former family, that breaking was the beginning of something new, something built not on lies or stolen money or false promises, but on the unbreakable bond between a mother and her children who'd faced the worst betrayal and chosen to rise together. The truth had broken Adrian, but it had set them free. Chapter 9. The reckoning. 6 months had passed since the trial. The Miami mansion was gone, sold to pay legal fees and debts. The cars, the jewelry, the art, all liquidated. The Drayton family empire had been reduced to ashes, but from those ashes, something unexpected was growing. Mariana stood in the small apartment in Coral Gables, sunlight streaming through windows that didn't have custom treatments, in a kitchen that didn't have marble counters. But Isla's laughter echoed from her room as she practiced for her Juilliard audition. They'd managed to save just enough for her first year. Julian's typing filled the evening air as he developed apps, already earning money at 13 that most adults couldn't dream of. They were surviving. More than that, they were healing. The doorbell rang. Mariana opened it to find Adrian standing there, but not the Adrian she'd divorced. This man was gaunt, grey-haired where he'd once dyed it, wearing a simple polo and jeans instead of designer suits. He held a manila envelope. "What are you doing here?" She didn't let him in. "I came to give you this." He handed her the envelope. "It's a check. Not much, but I've been working." "Working?" "Construction. Like when we met. Aurelius. Chen. He got me a job with his cousin's company." Adrian's hands, once manicured, were now calloused and scarred. "I've been saving everything I could." Mariana opened the envelope. $15,000. "It's for Isla's tuition," he said quietly. "I know it doesn't cover what I took, but I'll send more every month, every penny I don't need to survive." "Adrian, please, let me do this one thing right." Before Mariana could respond, Julian appeared. He'd grown 3 inches, his face losing its childhood softness. "Why are you here?" "Julian." Adrian's voice broke on his son's name. "I came to..." We don't need your money. Julian's voice was cold. I've been freelancing, coding for tech companies. I made 40,000 last quarter. You're 13. I had to grow up fast. Julian looked at his father with eyes that held no warmth. Someone had to take care of this family. I know. I'm sorry. Your apologies are worthless. Isla had joined them, tall and elegant, even in sweatpants and a tank top. You stole my future for a woman who laughed at you. You know what she said during the trial? That you were the easiest mark she ever had, that you practically threw money at her. Adrian flinched as if slapped. I know what I did. Do you? Isla stepped forward. Do you know that I cry myself to sleep thinking my own father loved a stranger more than me? Do you know that Julian has panic attacks every time Mummy is 5 minutes late because he's terrified she'll disappear too? Do you know what you actually did? I destroyed everything. No, Mariana said quietly. You destroyed yourself. We rebuilt. She tried to hand back the check, but Adrian stepped back. Please, it's not for forgiveness. I know that's impossible. It's penance. Let me do this. Fine. Mariana pocketed the check. But this doesn't change anything. I know. Adrian looked at his children, strangers now. Julian, your testimony, it was brilliant. You'll be a better man than I ever was. I already am. The words were cruel but true. Adrian nodded, accepting the blow. Isla, I heard you got into Juilliard. Early acceptance. No thanks to you. Number thanks to your talent, your determination, your mother's strength. He looked at Mariana. You raised them right. Without me, they became extraordinary. We were always extraordinary, Isla said. You just stopped seeing us. Adrian pulled out another envelope, smaller. These are letters, to each of you, not asking for anything, just the truth, about what happened to me, about how a man can lose himself so completely he destroys everything he claims to love. Maybe someday, when you're older, when it hurts less, you might want to understand. Not forgive, just understand. He set the envelope on the ground between them, not daring to come closer. I'm in therapy now. The court mandated it, but I would have gone anyway. The therapist says I had a narcissistic collapse. That success corrupted my ability to see myself clearly, that Sophia targeted that weakness perfectly. Don't blame her for your choices, Mariana said sharply. I'm not. She lit the match, but I'd already doused myself in gasoline. Adrian looked at them one last time, memorizing faces he'd never see again. I loved you all. I know you don't believe that now, but I did. I just loved myself more, and that self-love became self-destruction. He turned to leave, then stopped. Julian, there's something you should know. The FBI called me last week. They've recovered another 2 million from the Castellanos accounts. It'll be returned to you within the year. We know, Julian said. I've been tracking the case. Of course he had. Adrian smiled sadly. Of course you have. You're smarter at 13 than I was at 48. He left then, walking to a beat-up truck that looked nothing like the Bentley he'd once driven. They watched him go, this stranger who'd once been the center of their world. Do we read the letters? Isla asked, looking at the envelope on the ground. Someday, Mariana said, when we're ready. When reading them won't hurt. I already read mine, Julian said, surprising them. I hacked his email. He's been writing them for months. What did yours say? Julian was quiet for a moment. That he's proud of me for doing what he couldn't, protecting our family. That he wishes he'd been the father who deserved a son like me. That every line of code I write is a testament to who he could have been if he'd chosen differently. And nothing. They're just words. Pretty words like the ones Sophia used on him. Julian went back inside. Actions matter. His actions destroyed us. My actions saved us. That's all that matters. But that night, Mariana found Julian reading the letter again, tears streaming down his face. She held him as he sobbed, not for the father he'd lost, but for the father he'd never really had. "I keep thinking," Julian gasped between sobs, "if I'd been better, if I'd been more, would he have stayed?" "Oh, mijo. His leaving had nothing to do with you not being enough. It had to do with him not knowing what enough meant." The next morning brought unexpected news. Chen called with an offer. He wanted to hire Mariana as his new partner. "You were always the brains behind Adrian's success. I'd be honored to have you rebuild with me. I have children to raise. Bring them. Isla can practice in the office. Julian can innovate our tech infrastructure. Be a family while building a new empire, a better one. Why would you do this? Because Adrian was my friend, and I failed to stop his destruction. Let me help rebuild what he tore down." Mariana looked at her children, both listening intently. Isla nodded. Julian pulled up financial projections on his tablet, already calculating possibilities. "We'll try," Mariana said, "but we do this differently. No shortcuts, no risky investments, just steady, honest growth." "Agreed. Adrian built on ego. Let's build on wisdom." That afternoon, as they toured Chen's offices, Mariana's phone rang. An unknown number. "Mrs. Drayton? Former Mrs. Drayton? This is Warden Phillips at the Federal Correctional Institution. Sonia Castellanos wants to speak with you." "Absolutely not. She says she has information about hidden accounts. Money that could be recovered." Mariana looked at her children. They needed every penny for their futures. "Fine. When?" "Tomorrow. Visiting hours are at 2. The next day, Mariana sat across from Sophia in the prison visiting room. Orange didn't suit her, and desperation had replaced her calculated confidence. "You came," Sophia said. "You have 5 minutes. There's 3 million in an account in Bermuda. Adrian didn't know about it. I was keeping it as insurance." Sophia leaned forward. "I'll give you the access codes for a favor." "What favor?" "Write a letter to the parole board. Say I showed remorse, that I was young, influenced by my father." Mariana laughed, actually laughed. "You want me to lie for you, after you destroyed my family? I want you to be practical. 3 million buys a lot of future for your children. My children's futures aren't for sale, not anymore." "You're a fool. Adrian was right. You're too rigid, too moral for your own good. That morality is what'll let me sleep at night." Mariana stood. "Keep your blood money. We'll build our own fortune. You'll regret this." "I'd regret becoming anything like you or what Adrian became. My children are watching me. They're learning what integrity looks like. That's worth more than 3 million. As she left, Mariana felt lighter. The reckoning was complete. They'd faced their demons, rejected easy money, chosen the harder path of honest rebuilding. Outside, Julian and Isla waited in Chen's car. "How did it go?" Isla asked. "I said no to $3 million. "Good," Julian said simply. "We don't need their money. We have each other." And they did. A family forged in betrayal but strengthened by truth, building something new from the ruins of what was lost. The reckoning had come, and they'd emerged not unscathed, but unbroken. That was its own kind of victory. Chapter 10. Phoenix Rising 2 years later. The auditorium at Juilliard was packed, every seat filled for the sophomore showcase. In the third row, Mariana sat between Chen and Julian, now 15 and already accepted early to MIT. They'd flown in from Miami that morning, leaving behind the new offices of Baptiste Chen Enterprises, where Mariana had built something remarkable from the ashes of her former life. The irony wasn't lost on her. She sat here wearing a dress that cost more than Adrian had made in his first year in America, bought with money she'd earned herself, built from wisdom rather than greed. Success tasted different when you'd earned it from devastation rather than inherited it from love. Ladies and gentlemen, the announcer's voice filled the space, performing Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto No. 1. 3. Isla Drayton. Isla walked onto the stage, poised and radiant in a simple black dress, not designer but elegant in its simplicity. She'd insisted on keeping the Drayton name, not to honor her father, but to reclaim it, to prove that a name was what you made of it. "I am Isla Drayton," she'd told the admissions board, daughter of a woman who rebuilt an empire from betrayal and a boy who saved his family at 12. "My father's name is my reminder that we rise not because of our legacy, but despite it." As her fingers touched the keys, the audience fell silent. The piece was notoriously difficult, one of the most challenging in classical repertoire. But Isla played it like breathing, like the music lived in her bones and was simply finding its way out through her hands. Each note was a declaration: I survived, I thrived. I became extraordinary, not because of what I inherited, but because of what I overcame. Mariana remembered another performance years ago when Adrian had sat beside her, recording every second on his phone, whispering, "That's our baby," to anyone who would listen. Now that seat was empty, not just physically, but emotionally. They'd learned to stop looking for him in crowds, stop expecting him to walk through doors, stop waiting for him to remember who they'd been to him. Halfway through the performance, Mariana's phone vibrated. She almost ignored it, but something made her look. An alert from Julian's monitoring system. He still tracked certain things, habits dying hard. Adrian Vega Drayton, former Miami entrepreneur, found dead in his apartment. Apparent heart attack, age 52 inches. The words blurred, swimming before her eyes like a cruel poem. Mariana grabbed Julian's hand, showing him the screen. His face went pale, then carefully blank, the expression he'd perfected when feeling too much. "Should we tell her?" he whispered. "After," Mariana whispered back. "Let her have this moment untainted." On stage, Isla played on, unaware that her father had exited the world as she commanded its attention. The timing was cruelly poetic. She soared as he fell. She created beauty as he met his end. The man who'd stolen her dreams for a false one was dying alone while she lived hers magnificently. The last notes rang out, and the audience erupted. Standing ovation, tears on strangers' faces, cries of "Brava!" The head of Juilliard's piano department was openly weeping. A scout from the Berlin Philharmonic was already moving toward the stage. Isla bowed, her eyes finding her family in the crowd. She smiled, real, genuine, healed, the smile of someone who'd been broken and chose to become unbreakable. They didn't tell her until after the reception, in the quiet of her dorm room. Isla sat on her small bed, the one Adrian had never seen, in the life he'd never been part of, surrounded by photos of the family they'd rebuilt without him. "When?" she asked, her voice steady. "During your performance." She laughed, but it was hollow. He would have hated that, not being the center of attention even in death. "Isla, I'm okay, Mommy. I mourned him 2 years ago. This is just official." But that night, Mariana heard her crying through the thin walls, playing a melody on her keyboard, soft, mournful, beautiful. A goodbye to the father she'd had, not the stranger he'd become. Music that said what words couldn't. "I loved you once. You taught me to play. You threw it all away. But I play on." They flew back to Miami the next morning for the funeral. The funeral was small. Chen, Desmond, Lysander, a few construction workers Adrian had worked with in his final years. His foreman spoke briefly. "Adrian worked harder than any man I knew, never complained, sent every penny to his daughter's college, said he had a debt that could never be repaid, but he'd die trying." Sophia wasn't there, still serving her sentence, probably unaware or uncaring that the man who'd destroyed everything for her was gone. Her father had been convicted too, 20 years for running a fraud ring. The Castellanos' empire had fallen just as the Drayton one had, but without the phoenix rising from its ashes. Adrian's landlord had given them a box of his belongings. Inside, the wire ring he'd made for Mariana 22 years ago, their original wedding photo, pictures of the children through the years, newspaper clippings of Isla's performances and Julian's tech achievements, and a letter dated the day before his death. To my family, it began in handwriting that looked tired, defeated. By the time you read this, I'll be gone. The doctors say my heart is failing. Ironic, since I failed my heart years ago when I forgot it belonged to you. I've watched from afar, saw Isla's debut at Juilliard on YouTube, played it 347 times according to my computer, read about Julian's app that's revolutionizing financial security. Your son is a genius, Mariana, but you knew that. Heard about Mariana's company surpassing what we built together. Of course it did. You were always the real builder. I was just good at taking credit. You all became extraordinary without me, because of my absence, not despite it. The shadow I would have cast might have stunted your growth. Instead, you grew toward your own light. I worked construction these 2 years. My hands remembered honest work, even when my heart had forgotten honest love. Sent every spare penny to Isla's tuition, $127,000 total. It wasn't enough, could never be enough, but it was all I had. In the apartment, there's $50,000 in cash. I saved it for Julian's MIT expenses. It's clean money, earned with hands that remembered honest work too late. I lived on ramen again, like when we started. It tasted like penance, like memory, like the dreams we shared before I traded them for a nightmare. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm not asking for anything. I just wanted you to know that every day of these 2 years, I remembered who I was before I forgot. I remembered the man who loved you more than life. He died when Sophia entered our lives, but maybe that's justice, that I die remembering what I killed. Mariana, you were the love of my life. I just wasn't worthy of being yours. You deserved someone who valued diamonds over rhinestones. I was a fool who grabbed at glass thinking it was gold. Isla, you got your talent from your grandmother, your strength from your mother, and unfortunately, my capacity for both creation and destruction. You chose creation. You chose right. Julian, you saved them when I failed them. You're the man I should have been. The money is hidden in the false bottom of my toolbox, the same place I used to hide gifts for your mother when we were poor and love was enough. I loved you all. That love just got poisoned by greed, twisted by ego, murdered by my own hand. But it existed. It was real. Once. Live beautifully. Live honestly. Live everything I didn't. The stranger who was your father, Adrian, Mariana folded the letter carefully. Do we take the money? Yes, Julian said firmly. He earned it honestly. It's the only clean thing he left us. They went to Adrian's apartment, a studio in a rough neighborhood, nothing like the mansion they'd once shared. It was neat, almost military in its organization. On the walls, photos of them from before, each one worn from handling. On his nightstand, Isla's Juilliard acceptance letter, read so many times the paper was soft as cloth. On his laptop, videos of Julian's coding presentations, watched hundreds of times according to the view counter. He'd been living in their shadows, watching their light from his darkness, feeding on their success like a starving man watches a feast through a window. This is sad, Isla said, looking around. This is just sad. This is what choosing wrong looks like, Mariana said gently. Remember this when life offers you shortcuts. They found the money where Adrian said it would be, in the toolbox he'd owned since their beginning. Underneath the cash was another surprise, the business plan he'd written 20 years ago, the one that started everything. But all the parts about wealth and success were crossed out. Written in the margins were new goals. Make Mariana smile. Hear Isla play. Watch Julian graduate. Be worthy of their love. Goals he'd never achieved. Dreams that died with the dreamer. They donated his body to medical science. He'd have wanted to be useful, finally. There was no grave to visit, no stone to mark his passing, just the absence of someone who'd been absent long before death made it permanent. 6 months later, Baptiste Chen Enterprises went public. The IPO was massive, making Mariana wealthier than she'd ever been with Adrian. The Wall Street Journal ran a profile, From Ashes to Empire, how Mariana Baptiste built a fortune from betrayal. She'd insisted they use her maiden name for the article. Adrian Vega Drayton didn't deserve credit for what she'd built from his destruction, but this wealth felt different, earned, honest, built on wisdom instead of greed. Every dollar was a choice to rise rather than fall. Every success was proof that betrayal didn't have to break you. At the celebration, held in the same ballroom where Adrian had met Sophia 3 years ago, Chen raised a toast. To Mariana, who proved that the phoenix isn't just a myth, that from ashes can come fire, that destruction can birth creation. To our children, Mariana countered, looking at Julian, who'd just sold his security app to Microsoft for $8 million, the youngest person ever to make such a deal, at Isla, who'd been selected for a European tour with the Berlin Philharmonic, who showed us that breaking doesn't mean broken. As the party continued, Mariana stepped onto the balcony overlooking Miami. The city sprawled beneath her, lights twinkling like the dreams she'd once shared with a young Cuban man who promised her the world. He'd kept that promise, just not how either of them expected. He'd given her the world by leaving it, forcing her to build her own universe. Julian joined her, taller now, his face losing the last of its boyish softness. You're thinking about him. I'm thinking about us, about how we survived. We did more than survive, Mummy. We thrived. Because of you, you saved us. Number. We saved each other. That's what family really is, not blood or names or legacy. It's choosing each other when everything else falls apart. Isla appeared with champagne, elegant and confident in a way that had nothing to do with money and everything to do with self-knowledge. Chen wants to make a speech about female empowerment in business. Should we run? They laughed, the three of them, standing together overlooking the city they'd conquered without the man who'd promised to conquer it for them. To us, Isla said, raising her glass. To us, Mariana and Julian echoed. To rising, Mariana added. As they toasted, Mariana felt something shift. The last of her anger, her hurt, her betrayal. It lifted like fog, burning off in morning sun. Adrian was gone. The pain he'd caused was fading. But they remained, stronger, better, more honest than they'd ever been in their golden cage. The phoenix had risen. Not from Adrian's ashes, but from their own transformation. They'd been burned down to nothing and chose to become everything. Later that night, alone in her new penthouse, bought with her own money, earned with her own hands, Mariana pulled out the wire ring Adrian had made her. She didn't wear it, didn't keep it, didn't mourn over it. She walked to the balcony and let it go, watching it disappear into the night. Somewhere it would land. Somewhere it would rust. Somewhere it would become nothing, like the promises it once represented. But here, in this moment, in this life she'd built from betrayal and shattered trust, Mariana Elise Baptiste, she'd taken back her maiden name, was everything. Mother, businesswoman, survivor, phoenix. The empire had fallen. The emperor had died alone in a studio apartment, clutching photos of a life he'd thrown away. But the empress, She ruled a new kingdom, one built on truth and protected by love that betrayal couldn't break. And in this kingdom, happy endings weren't about reconciliation or forgiveness or even justice. They were about choosing to rise when falling would have been easier, about building when destruction was all around, about loving when love had been weaponized against you. Adrian had stolen their money. He'd tried to steal their futures, but he couldn't steal their ability to rise. And rise they did, higher than he'd ever dreamed, because they dreamed with their eyes open, while his had been closed by a beautiful lie. The greatest revenge wasn't the money she'd earned or the success she'd built. It was the Sunday dinners where they laughed without looking at the empty chair. It was Isla getting a standing ovation at Carnegie Hall, while Adrian wasn't even a memory in the audience. It was Julian being featured on the cover of Tech Weekly as the teenage genius who revolutionized financial security without any mention of his father. The greatest revenge was being so complete without him that his absence wasn't even noticed anymore. The phoenix had risen, and she was magnificent. Epilogue. 5 years after. The letter arrived on a Tuesday, delivered by a courier who insisted on a signature. Mariana almost refused it. She'd learned to be wary of unexpected packages. But the return address caught her eye. Castellanos, S. Sofia. 5 years into her sentence, writing to the woman whose life she'd helped destroy. Inside, handwritten on prison stationery. Mrs. Baptiste, you won't want to read this. I wouldn't if I were you. But therapy here is mandatory, and my therapist insists I make amends. Not for forgiveness. I know that's impossible, but for my own soul, whatever's left of it. I targeted your husband because he was easy. Rich, aging, desperate to feel young. They all are. But something went wrong with your husband. He fell harder than the others, gave more, destroyed more. I thought it was because he was weaker, but now I understand. It was because he had more to lose. The others had money. He had you. A real family, real love. Something I've never had and convinced myself didn't exist. I'm writing to tell you that in my apartment there's a safe. The FBI missed it. It's built into the wall behind a painting of the Miami skyline. The combination is your wedding date. Inside is everything I kept. Not money, but documents. Proof of Adrian's legitimate investments, the ones that actually had value, about $3 million in recoverable assets. They're yours by right. I also wanted you to know that Adrian talked about you constantly. Even in bed with me, he talked about you, about how you built the empire together, about how you were the smart one, about how you understood him when he had nothing. It made me hate you, how present you were even in your absence. He loved you until the end. He just loved himself more. I'll be released in 10 years. I'll be 35, starting over with nothing, branded as a felon. You won, not because you sent me to prison, but because you have what I pretended money could buy. People who love you for who you are, not what you have. There's no apology big enough for what I did, so I won't insult you with one. Just know that every day in here, I think about the family I destroyed and the family that survived it. You haunt me more than these walls. S. Castellanos. Mariana read the letter twice, then handed it to Julian, now 20, and running his own cybersecurity firm from their offices. Do we check the safe? He asked. What do you think? I think we already have everything we need. But $3 million is nothing compared to what we've built ourselves. They did check, eventually. The safe was there. The documents were real. They recovered the $3 million and donated it to a scholarship fund for children whose parents had been victims of fraud. Isla performed at Carnegie Hall that year, the youngest soloist in a decade. In the audience, Mariana sat with Julian and his fiancée, a brilliant coder he'd met at MIT. Chen was there with his family. Desmond with his. The family Adrian had thrown away for an illusion had become something he'd never imagined, whole without him. As Ila's final note rang out through Carnegie Hall, Mariana thought she saw him, a shadow in the balcony, a familiar silhouette, But when she looked again, it was just a trick of the light. Adrian was gone, had been gone long before his death. But they remained. They rose. They conquered. The phoenix didn't need the ashes anymore. She flew on her own wings, powered by her own fire, lighting her own way. The greatest revenge wasn't success. It was happiness, pure, honest, hard-won happiness, and they had it in abundance. The end. Sometimes the greatest love stories are about learning to love yourself after someone teaches you how to hate. Sometimes the greatest victories come from defeats that should have destroyed you. Sometimes the phoenix rises not because of the fire, but in spite of it.